Senator Grassley is going to be near Des Moines, in Norwalk, little town just south of Des Moines, this Saturday. Let's see, that'd be the 7th? It's the 8th? Today's the 2nd.
9th. Oh.
7th, yeah. March 7th. And it's kind of a rare opportunity because he isn't in Iowa that much during the Senate session. He's going to be in Norwalk at 1:30, and 11:30 he's going to be in Truro. Truro. It's in Madison County, just west of Des Moines. And he has an invitation going out to people saying, bring a friend who has some questions. So like he's going to be really open to talking to people. That's really rare because like if you want to talk to an influential congressman or senator who is not in your district, you get a polite letter back from that's congressman or senator telling you who your congressman or senator is that you get to vote for. So in other words, if you want to write to a congressman who you think might be friendly to immigration reform, and you want to give him some information, he'll send you a letter. If you live in Steve King's district, he'll send you a letter saying, why don't you talk to Steve King about it? But in our case, here in Iowa, we get to talk to our senator who just, if you're concerned about immigration reform, he is the fellow who approves or has the power to kill any kind of any immigration law that comes before the Senate. And so, wouldn't it be nice if about 40 or 50 people would come to these meetings and ask him, in 2013 when the Democrat was in charge, there was 39 expert witnesses on immigration reform, and only one of them had a degree in economics. Senator Grassley, are you more, as your chairman and picking expert witnesses, would you be open to having economists better represented instead of these undocumented economists who tell the world how bad immigration is for our economy, and yet they don't care enough to about understanding economics to have made that their major in college? What do you think, Senator Grassley? I talked to Senator Grassley last October personally, and he said, write to me. I'll answer you. Well, I've written to him a couple of times since then. He hasn't answered. So, but this is a way, if people would come to him with this question, or with any question that you can all agree on and coordinate on, you see how influential that process can be. Well, I have some trick questions for you.
Okay.
These are traps.
Okay.
Just want to let you know ahead of time.
All right.
Who is the most famous singer?
Who is the most famous singer? Elvis Presley.
Living.
Oh, living singer? Ooh, that's a tough one.
Who's your favorite?
Who's my favorite singer?
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank. I don't know.
Do you know any singers?
Yeah. Well, my son, he's a great singer. Love to hear him sing.
You're messing up my questions here.
Okay, a great singer. Living. Okay, I'll say Robert Plant.
Robert Plant.
Sure.
All right. The guy with Led Zeppelin.
Yes.
The guy that sang Stairway to Heaven and wrote it. Okay. If he came to Des Moines, how many people do you think would come and listen to him?
Probably about 80% of the Midwest.
And how
Anybody
much,
under 60?
and how much do you think they would pay to get in?
I think the tickets would go anywhere from $150 to a couple $1,000s a piece.
Wow. Would you go?
Probably not.
Because of the price?
Because the price, yeah, it's kind of a waste of money. I can see him on TV or see him in video if I want to.
How about a soccer star or another sports star? Are you a sports fan?
I am a sports fan.
And if a sports hero were to come here, how many think would come to watch a game?
Probably not nearly as many as the singer.
Really?
Yeah. But quite a few, yeah. A lot of people.
How much do you think they'd pay for that?
Probably somewhere on the basis of $50 to $150, $200.
How about a quinceañera? How many come to those things?
Usually 100, 150 people.
And how many quinceañeras do you think people, Latinos or people with Latino friendships or relationships attend?
In a lifetime?
Or a year?
In a year? Maybe one a year. Sometimes two in a year.
Okay. How many political meetings have you attended?
0.
Except for this.
Unless you want to count, I saw the Pope at the airport one year.
Oh.
It wasn't much of a political meeting, but
It's a little
Pope-
political,
Pope John
I
Paul.
suppose. It's more political than most pastors.
yeah.
Who is your favorite politician?
My favorite politician, well, in order to answer that question, I have to say that I hate all politicians, so
Ooh.
it would have to be my least hated politician. Oh, right now I like Jeb Bush.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rand Paul.
Wow. So you actually
Right.
heard of these guys. You
Re-
must be really involved.
Now these have to be living politicians?
Okay. If one of those two guys came to Des Moines, how many do you think would go to listen to him?
Probably a handful, maybe 150 people.
How much do you think they'd pay to get in?
Not a dime. You'd have to pay me to go to one of those.
Actually, just for the record, I received an invitation to go to a Jeb Bush event.
Okay.
It's coming up in the next week or two. I think it's $100 to get in.
Really?
And they're probably going to expect 50 to 100 people.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a small group of people that are willing to even go,
Mm-hmm.
and and a lot of those proportionally seem to have money to. You really care. They really do care. But most
Well-
people just really, like you say, would not pay a dime.
I think that people's perception of what goes on in politics is everything they learn about politics they learn from watching the news, and there's no real reporting on any grassroots events on the news. Everything is national news, and the big news now is who's going to run for election in 2016, and they kind of overlook all the smaller subjects.
Yeah, in other words, they're reporting, they spend most of their time reporting who will win and very little on who should win or
Yeah.
why.
Or why, exactly.
How many Do you know anyone who's suffering because of immigration restrictions?
Sure.
Are they people you care about or love?
Yeah.
Do you care enough about them to care about healing our laws?
I'm concerned about our laws. Definitely. They need to be changed. Something needs to be done. People need to speak up and demand changes.
Is that as important to you as a singer or a sports star or a quinceañera?
Yeah. I'd say it's more important.
Why do you think people would rather take time for what they least care about and be too busy for what they most care about?
Well, I think a lot of the things that you've mentioned, the going to see your favorite band or going to a party, I mean, they're escapes. They're ways of getting out of having to deal with everyday problems. And then when they do deal with their everyday problems, they're pretty personal problems, and I don't think that many people really know how to go about dealing with a politician or contacting a politician, their congressman, and working on these kind of subjects. There's not enough education out there. There's not enough people being informed. I think the government has a lot to do with that. I don't think the government really wants people to be informed because they like to be able to do things the way they want to and not have the public involved.
Sometimes I'm tempted to feel frustrated that I mean, it's not rocket science how to influence legislation, how to heal laws.
Mm-hmm.
It's common knowledge, and if we had I can explain it to a few people. If we had a few people more in a meeting, we could bring in some Republican or Democrat leaders to further explain how the process works and how people can get involved. But I talk to other activists, and they report the same experience, the same difficulty getting people to come to a political meeting to address what they most care about. Even when people are personally suffering greatly because of these restrictions, even they would, in your words, prefer to escape than to slay the beast that's terrorizing them. It's like human nature has a resistance, has an embedded resistance to opening the gift which God places before us. But I stopped taking it personally when I realized God has the same experience. God offers us heaven. Now, heaven is a lot more valuable than anything I offer. And so if people won't even come to a meeting about heaven, why should I be surprised if people won't come to a meeting merely about letting their family live by coming here? But it is said there are 11 million undocumented people living here, immigrants living in the United States, and many of them have families they desperately need to get here. I mean, people that can't survive where they are. And many citizens also have families that need to come here. Now, give me a figure. How many are hurting because of restrictions, so that healing our laws is very important to them? Give me a figure. How many million do you think? Of those 11 million, do you think all of them care? Do you think there's more people than those 11 million that care?
I'm sure there are, yeah. I mean, a lot of citizens care. A lot of people who aren't directly affected by the immigration laws care. I mean, I would say a lot of people, yeah.
Uh, Give me a figure of how many of them coming to meetings and educate to learn what the issues are so that they can call a politician and educate them, and they're studying together how to answer people who want to restrict immigration. How many people coming together would it take to heal immigration law in your concept? Throw out a figure.
I think it would take a large portion of the population. It's a hard question to answer. I mean, and just give a direct figure.
Give me a figure where it becomes obvious to you that if there were that many working and studying together, our laws would be healed.
Well, I think the biggest obstacle is the fact that the politicians are owned by corporations. Corporations have deep pockets. Individuals have a hard time believing that they're going to accomplish anything by going to a meeting or making changes in their lives, because there's a larger entity that controls the government and has the politicians in their pockets.
So how many million do you think it would take to overcome that? Throw out a figure. I mean, if I were to say 50 million people were agreed on understanding the problem and how to solve it, and we're calling their politicians, would that be a figure that to you would be obvious that immigration law would be healed?
No, I think it would raise some eyebrows, but I don't think it would heal it. I think it
Really? 50 million
yeah,
people?
I think it would take a majority. I mean, you'd have to have half the population of the United States wanting the change. You don't have that right now. Most people are convinced that immigration is bad. That immigration is bad for the economy. It's bad for the citizens.
So you would take out of 350. Now keep in mind, we have out of 350 million population, I guess I don't know the figures, let's say maybe 200 million are eligible to vote because they're old enough.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that, typically only about 50% are registered to vote. The rest don't even care about that.
Okay.
Enough to even register. And out of that, only about half of those registered to vote.
So we're back to 50 million.
Yeah,
so 50 million
so
sounds,
if we had
you put
50
it that way.
million cared,
Yeah,
that would be unanimous.
sure. Yep, when you put it that way, 50 million is a pretty good number.
So, so 25 million would be a majority.
Well, you just answered a lot of your own questions. I mean, if there's 350 million people in the United States and 200 million are eligible to vote, and you're only getting maybe a turnout of 50 million people, right there's your problem.
Those are rough figures, of course. I haven't looked them up for a while. Every once in a while there's articles telling how low it is.
Yeah. I would think 50 million is probably a high number of people who vote.
It depends on the election.
And then there's also the electoral college. I mean, how many people are in the electoral college? They're the ones that really decide the elections and choose our politicians.
I'd like to try and explain why I believe about 1,000 people would be enough to heal immigration law.
Okay.
The system we have now relies on lobbyists and volunteer lobbyists who we call activists.
Mhm.
Lobbyists, like for example here in Iowa, there's, I haven't looked at these figures for a long time either, but there's roughly half a dozen lobbyists that would be involved in any kind of immigration law here in Iowa before the Iowa legislature. There's the Catholics have a lobbyist, Methodists have a lobbyist, evangelicals have, and the family leader, which is not directly associated with any church in the sense that the Methodists and Catholics are. It's an independent organization. Then there's other moral issue groups that would not say anything about immigration. There's the gun owners, the homeschoolers, the pro-lifers, and that's probably about it for, I guess I'm thinking on the conservative side. On the liberal side, well, you've got the ACLU. They're very helpful for immigration reform. The Friends Church, American AFSC, American Friends Service Committee. But now these lobbyists, the ones that are associated with large organizations, have a lot of money to give to politicians. So if there's their contributions might vary from $100 to $1,000 per politician. Now there's 150 politicians. Actually, every election there's 125 because the Senate's just go every other election. So every 2 years, they'll interview politicians and see who's going to support their issue and give money to the ones that they think will. And then the rest of the year, they spend going to try and talk with them about specific bills to make sure they do. Make sure they understand which bills they bought. I shouldn't be quite so cynical. They don't really buy. Well, it depends on the individual, on the individual politician, whether that money is really making a difference in how much they would choose to vote, or whether it's what they would have voted for anyway, and they just appreciate the support, which enables them to get elected. But anyway, the lobbyists have mailing lists of people who will receive news updates from them, and I'm going to guess, from my experience, out of a 4-month session, there might be 2, possibly 3 times during the session when you get an email saying, call your legislator to get this bill through. And hardly any information about what the bill says. And so basically have one lobbyist trying to push for his issue all by himself. And although he's got money, he doesn't really have an organized army of intelligent people who understand the bill and are and can call up their legislature and talk to them intelligently about it. It's just like, well, so-and-so told me to call you, so I'm calling you. So do with that what you want to. Where this system fails is that a lawmaker is hearing from his lobbyist. in the case of immigration reform, I don't know if anyone's given money to a politician to support the interests of immigrants
Mhm.
in the Iowa legislature. I'm not sure what goes on. I doubt if there's very much going on in Congress either. So the problem is that a lawmaker, you picture yourself a lawmaker, and you hear from the lobbyist and tells you all these reasons you need to vote for his bill, and then you get a few calls from uninformed people that the lobbyist asked to call, and then you get emails driven by media, the Des Moines Register, but also in the case of immigration reform, we have people like WorldNet Daily News and Tea Party patriots and Tea Party groups and so on that are saying, that are putting in all this information about how immigrants take away jobs from citizens. They're criminals. They're bringing us diseases. They are driving our government into the toilet economically, and that politician, and you as a politician have to go out and face the masses, which are hearing these stories from people that are lying to them.
Mhm.
And the further problem is that all these people driven to you by the lobbyists believe those lies too.
Mhm.
And the lobbyists probably do. And so you as a politician, even if you know the truth, even if you have a degree in economics yourself, do you dare to tell people what you know?
Not if you want to keep your job.
So, there's so little education. There's so few people that understand the economic benefits to citizens of unlimited, numerically unlimited immigration. But I'm convinced a small number who understand and who will coordinate to contact lawmakers can change it. Does that make sense?
Sure.
In the case of Senator Grassley, as we said, we here in Iowa we have an amazing opportunity. Besides Senator Grassley, we have all the presidential candidates coming here.
Mhm.
If we could gather 150, you say, comes to a quinceañera. If we could gather that many to come listen to and talk with a presidential candidate, it would be pretty hard for a presidential candidate to turn us down.
Mhm.
A presidential candidate, if we get 500, that would seal it. He would come. He would have to. And if the people in the audience were united in understanding some of these facts, see, if they're not, you see the problem? The presidential candidate says, this is a bunch of mumbo jumbo that half the country believes, and half the people in your crowd will believe it too, so you've lost any advantage for trying to get through to them.
I think it's an uphill battle. I mean, you have a majority of the citizens of the United States can't tell you what the First Amendment to the Constitution is. They're not interested in politics. They don't know the laws of the land. And then the people who come here from other countries, they definitely don't know how the system works.
But it's willful ignorance, isn't it?
It is willful ignorance. Yeah.
Because when people are invited to a meeting, well, the presumption is you're going to find out
You're
how
going to
the
learn
system
something.
works.
Exactly. And then again, there's so many people out there who are passing around bad information. I mean, let's say you go to a meeting and you hear the truth. Then you go home that night and you turn on the TV and you hear something on the news that just completely contradicts everything you just heard at a meeting. Who do you believe? How do you know who to believe? How do you know what's right and wrong? Especially when you're not even interested enough to try to find out what's right or wrong.
And that's where I want a new kind of meeting. Because when there are meetings that gather 100 people, I've seen it 2 or 3 times in the last couple of years. Meetings about immigration that gather a couple of 100 people. But when they have these meetings, it's not terribly educational. It's certainly not educational to the point where people are trained how to respond to restrictionists and how to persuade politicians. Rather, it's like, I want you to all call Senator Grassley and ask him to vote for SF 3221.
Oh yeah, that one.
And not a terrible amount of understanding of why or what's in it. What the it's like you going to your it's like going to a doctor and getting a pill and not being curious about the side effects.
Mm-hmm. Well, aren't the bills just completely loaded with all kinds of other incidental type of regulations? I mean, every bill, if I was to vote for a bill that helped me in one area of my life, chances are there's something attached to that bill that's going to be that's going to affect me adversely. I mean, there's so many different things that are attached to one bill. No one bill is specific. There's always these earmarks and things attached to it.
Yeah.
In order to get it passed, they have to make concessions, and the bill never comes out really 100% anyway.
Yeah, allow me to distinguish here between the U.S. Congress and the Iowa legislature. The Iowa legislature has a law against doing that.
Okay.
Every part of a bill has to be germane, is their word.
Mm-hmm.
It's a legal term, meaning relevant. Has to be relevant to the theme of the bill.
Right.
And you have a title of the bill, and everything in the bill has to be relevant to that title. You have to have fair warning of what you're voting for. Now, in the U.S. Congress, there's no such limitation,
Right.
and it's like you say. But this is precisely because, and it's precisely to the extent that average voters are not paying attention to the details.
Mm-hmm.
If many people were further, there are several organizations of attorneys, immigration attorneys, that do communicate with lawmakers, but not with average people. So, and it's good that they have this representation, but they're not educating average people about the details of the bill, much less are they taking suggestions from average people about what should be in the bill. And so therefore, all that average voters find out is, vote for this bill. And then Congress, other congressmen that don't really like that bill will want something else, and they'll vote for it in exchange for a payback. The bill, that stuff is added in order to get that guy's vote. And well, if people were paying attention to the details and saw that in there and saw the damage it would do, they'd strip it out, but hardly anyone knows. And the lobbyists working for the immigration attorneys or other reform groups, look at all of those earmarks and say, well, that's political reality. We have to put up with this. We're going to compromise.
Yep.
And they have to compromise because they can't draw on an army of educated people about the details to go contact their congressman and tell them to take out that foolishness.
Mhm.
So Senator Grassley is going to be here Saturday. I wonder if anyone will show up. Besides me, I'm going to try and go. I have to switch some lessons because I have about $40 worth of music lessons scheduled at that time. If I can't switch them, I can't afford to go.
Mhm.
But, well, anyone else? If I go, I don't know if I'll get a chance to talk to them. If there are several, we could get that question asked and see what his answer is. Would you, Senator Grassley, would you support having economists testify at your next hearing on immigration reform instead of just undocumented economists? That's about all I can think of to say on that subject. What do you think about talking about politics in general, about liberal versus conservative?
It's fine.
You want to start off?
Why don't you start off and I'll join in.
Well, should we take it subject like we can talk about sodomite marriage? I use that word. Or abortion, or taxes. Have you heard about the, what do they call it? The national sales tax?
Yeah,
Eliminating the IRS altogether.
yeah. I don't see a problem with eliminating the IRS. I think Steve Forbes had a good idea with the flat tax.
That, except that it would not have eliminated the IRS.
No, but it would eliminate a lot of the bureaucracy involved with the IRS.
It certainly would be an improvement.
Yep. And I think it's fair. A lot of people complain. I hear a lot of people complaining that the rich don't pay their share. They get a lesser percentage on their taxes, and corporations get breaks on taxes. But I was doing a little bit of research on my own and trying to figure out how much the federal government spends on every individual in the United States. And I came up with a number of around $10,000 per person, and the average person doesn't pay $10,000 worth of taxes a year. So where's that money coming from? It has to be coming from wealthy corporations and groups with a lot more money. So I don't know if 15% is really fair, but I think, like you said, it's better than what we have now. And I see everybody wants to raise the minimum wage. They think that people need a living wage, and the minimum wage should be raised according so everybody can make enough money to live on. But they tend to miss the fact that people who make small amounts of money are still being taxed by the government. I think that there should be a lot more tax breaks for low-income people.
Everyone pays Social Security tax.
Right.
And a lot of the poorest people are exempt from so-called federal taxes, but they still pay the Social Security taxes. Even if you make $1,000, 15% of it goes.
Yep.
Did you know it's 15% instead of 7%?
What's that?
Social Security tax.
Yeah.
You knew that?
It's 15%.
Okay.
Right.
Most people don't know it because they just see it's 7.5% taken out of their paychecks.
Mhm.
And they don't realize their employer pays another 7.5%, or they don't make the connection and think, well, if the employer didn't have to pay that 7.5%, maybe he could pay me more. So, we haven't got any controversy on that apparently yet, so maybe we'll better pick another subject.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sodomite marriage, what do you think of that?
Well, it's funny, living in California, 6-7 years ago, there was a Proposition 8 that was being debated and was to be voted on, and I had made a few comments on social media that I had voted for Proposition 8, and people would ask me, what is that? Nobody knew what it was. Nobody paid any attention to it.
Wow.
So,
even in California.
Yeah.
Wow.
So a lot of the people, I think, like you said, a very small number of people voted on Proposition 8, and it passed and changed the laws in California as far as gay marriage goes.
I don't remember. Did that make gay marriage legal or
Yes.
illegal?
Made it legal.
Made it legal.
Mhm.
Okay. Wow. So, what do you think about it? Was that the right thing to do?
Absolutely. I don't see why gay people shouldn't have the opportunity to be just as miserable as the rest of us.
Once when I was running for Senate, I was interviewed by a sodomite news team. They came right into this room and interviewed me. And they asked me about that. My answer was that it doesn't seem to me that our laws should encourage a behavior that shortens human lifetimes way more than smoking.
Okay. Go on.
Does that seem like a logical reason to you?
Well, it would be a logical reason if I knew why it would shorten somebody's life expectancy.
Last time I tried to do some, see what the research about that was 2 or 3 years ago. I was reading that smoking shortens lifetimes by about 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's harder to pin down the figures on sodomy, but it's around 15 years or so.
Okay. So
Yeah.
just gay relationships in general shorten your lifespan. Just being a homosexual is going to shorten your lifespan.
Do you understand why?
No.
Do you know what they do?
Well, of course I know what they do.
Doesn't that seem a little bit
Well,
unsanitary?
a lot of heterosexual people do the same thing.
Uh,
I mean, that it's a moral issue. There's a lot of things that people do that shorten their lives as far as...
This is a family show, and I really hate to go into detail about this, but when you say heterosexuals do what homosexuals do, gosh, how do I clarify this?
They engage in sodomy. I don't think sodomy is exclusive to homosexuals.
Oh man, I hate to go into detail. How do I address this?
Maybe we should move on to another subject.
It's so misunderstood, and people don't, precisely because those who know these things don't want to talk about it any more than I do, I suppose. But the behavior you are probably referring to.
Mm-hmm.
Swallowing these substances is medically as dangerous as swallowing blood.
Okay.
It has many of the same properties. It's not safe, even when heterosexuals do it, except that homosexuals do far worse. They do things that heterosexuals do not do. And
Well, there's deviations and perversions and
but these are widespread. These are wide. The worst that they do is engaged in by a great majority of sodomites.
okay.
And it's so unsanitary that it's inconceivable how you could do this and not come down with a horrible disease. And that's about as far as I want to go into details about this.
Okay. Are you sure you're not going to reconsider editing this tape?
I've said these things before.
Yeah.
Uh,
You're not the first person to say it. And you won't be the last person to say it.
No.
I think everybody
and Romans
at some point thinks about it.
Romans chapter 1 says this too. It says that this is such an unnatural thing. I mean, you can look at the equipment and see it's not the way it was designed. And it's unnatural, and it's a natural consequence, the diseases that these people are suffering. Romans 1 says that. Anyway.
What about love between two people? Isn't love a different? I mean,
Sodomites are so much more promiscuous. It's incredibly more promiscuous than any heterosexual. And
well, I think those are assumptions. They may be
no,
true,
they're
but
not. Well, yeah, they're true. I mean, there's the occasional exception, obviously, but the general thrust is they're very promiscuous, incredibly. But the model of love in the Bible is one man and one woman for life. And I have a long article about what happens to love in any promiscuous relationship, any case of fornication or adultery. It's based on deceit. I mean, how many people?
well, the people.
How many people are in an adulterous relationship will be honest with each other about whether they have a disease, for example, just for starters?
Well, first off, I'd like to make the point that if a gay couple is seeking a chance to get married, then they're probably not promiscuous. They're probably wanting to spend their lives together. So it's kind of a contradiction. I mean, if gay marriage is legal and gay people are allowed to marry each other, it kind of eliminates the promiscuity. Maybe not eliminate it, but reduces it. Gives them a chance to have a more normal relationship, more normal lifestyle. I mean, it's inevitable that it's going to happen. I mean, there's no stopping it now. I mean, this is a new age. People are going to do what they're going to do.
I don't believe that.
And I'm a strong believer that the government, as far as laws go, the government needs to stay out of especially the federal government needs to stay out of our business and let us live our lives the way we want to. I mean, let's say people are gay and they're promiscuous and they shorten their lives by 15 years. They're not shortening anybody else's lives. They're not taking away anybody else's rights. They're not victimizing anybody. They're just living their lives the way they want to.
How about smokers? The big reason for laws against restricting smoking, were the cost to our healthcare system.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's a legitimate reason for the government to be involved in restricting smoking?
No. No, I believe in personal responsibility. If you're going to smoke, then you should pay the price.
Well, but our healthcare system, of course, pays the price for people that can't afford it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That was the argument.
Mhm.
Do you at least agree that that argument exists, at least equally for homosexuals, if in fact it is true that they're a very diseased group of people,
Um,
more so than smokers?
no, not necessarily, because the medical community is very innovative. There's ways of dealing with disease and reducing disease. I mean, we deal with it every day, and every group of people on Earth has to deal with disease, and the medical community innovates. It finds solutions. It finds cures. I'm not suggesting they find a cure for homosexuality, but
Let me ask my question again. Even though you don't agree with laws against smoking,
Mhm.
can you see the logic that if it were legitimate to restrict smoking, it would be more legitimate to restrict, or at least not to encourage, a behavior which threatens our medical system way more than smoking?
well, I don't think anybody's encouraging it.
Well,
First of all,
laws giving marriage rights are encouragement. Now, they're an encouragement in two ways. One is there's many specific legal benefits of marriage.
mhm.
As far as applying for benefits from the government and property rights, etc., insurance of survivors, and all kinds of legal ramifications. But also, more important to sodomites is the validation of their behavior.
Mhm.
The social acceptance is very important to their recruiting efforts.
Okay, well, if you're allowing homosexuals to marry, then you actually are encouraging them to engage in a healthier behavior, a healthier relationship. You're encouraging them not to be as promiscuous. That is acceptable. That is, to me, is logical. If you don't allow them to get married, you're telling them that it's okay to be promiscuous, that we're okay with you being a homosexual as long as you don't enjoy the same benefits that a man and a woman do, because morally it's more acceptable for a man and woman to be married. It's decent.
From what I've seen, articles I've seen, marriage among them does not particularly reduce their promiscuity. They remain promiscuous. Generally, obviously there's exceptions
Well,
to any rule.
as far as smoking, the government restricting smoking, the government restricting any type of behavior in the United States, based on the fact that it's a burden to the medical society or medical community, it's a slippery slope. First you restrict smoking, then you restrict drinking, and then before long you're just looking for, the government's looking for anything you do that is considered or deemed unhealthy, and they're going to restrict it. Pretty soon they're going to restrict how many calories we take in, what kind of food we eat, how much time we spend in the sunlight, how many days a week we drive a car. I mean, it's never going to end, and before long the government's going to be telling us when to wake up in the morning, and where we're going to work, and where we're going to live, and how many children we can have. I mean, it's a very slippery slope. And there's a group of people who think that homosexual or gay marriage is okay, and there's a group of people that think it's not okay, and then there's a huge number of people who are indifferent.
Which are you?
I'm
Now let's distinguish. You've been making arguments about liberty under the
Mhm.
government laws, but then there's a separate consideration about whether you personally believe that this is a, I don't know, healthy, legitimate lifestyle. So on that second issue, where do you stand?
I'm indifferent. I don't really. I guess I don't really care if it's a healthy, legitimate lifestyle. It's not my lifestyle, so I don't have to deal with the consequences or the benefits of it, of the lifestyle. It's up to the person, the individual. So I guess I would have to say I'm indifferent to it.
A lot of people that have opposite opinions on this issue have difficulty talking with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we just about have a minute to go.
Okay.
And so I'll just about enough to observe that a lot of the disagreement between you and me probably rests on the different understanding of some of the relevant facts.
Mm-hmm.
And if we were serious about trying to come to an agreement on this, we probably want to spend more time researching together
Mm-hmm.
and looking at the same evidence and the same studies and picking apart what the other person brings to us. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's worthwhile process, and I think it's something that people should do a lot more rather than just have these divisions without
Mm-hmm.
knowing each other's reasons for views. And I look forward to more discussion, and that's about all the time we have. Thank you for being with me
Thank you.
again.
My pleasure.